Bravo's another great example where by bringing Bravo content over to Peacock exclusively next day, we've really been able to extend the reach and grow the fandom of some of these franchises within the Bravo ecosystem. Vanderpump Rules being a recent example where not only do we have the show next day, but we've created these extended versions of certain episodes, and we're really establishing like a home for the fandom on Peacock. We're doing that with partners.
There's been some controversy too.
Yes, Campbell.
Which helps. So what are you doing at Cannes Lions? Who are you meeting with? What is the story that you're hearing? What is the story you're telling?
Peacock has tremendous momentum right now. So really, we're here to talk to a number of partners about the momentum that Peacock has. It's been an incredible couple of years. Last year was huge. Peacock was the fastest growing, most downloaded streaming app. So that story of growth and momentum is really at the front and center. And like most people in Cannes, we're here meeting with our partners, everyone from brand partners to distribution partners, strategic partners in general, and we're looking to inspire and be inspired. It is the festival of creativity, after all.
So in the time that you've been at NBCU heading Peacock for about a year and a half now, how has Peacock changed? What have been the biggest beats in the Peacock story so far?
Well, last year in February, we had a really big beat. We called it the Big Four or the Quad Weekend, when Peacock had all in one weekend, the Super Bowl, the Winter Olympics, the launch of a day-and-date film called Marry Me, starring Jennifer Lopez, and our big breakout original series, Bel-Air Season 1. And that really was a turning point for Peacock when it came to trajectory and momentum. We continued on to have our biggest growth year. Peacock last year was also the fastest growing streaming app, the most downloaded streaming app. So that really set us on this incredible trajectory, off to a strong start this year. And then, of course, we launched shows like Poker Face and Mrs. Davis and Bupkis. We've had some incredible sports moments. We've had big films straight from theaters to Peacock. And together, these are continuing to just make the growth trajectory for Peacock very strong. We're having another big year.
So, I mean, obviously, you know how competitive the streaming environment is. What is it that Peacock is looking to distinguish itself as?
Peacock really stands out for having the most complete offering to the consumer. We have more live sports than any other streamer. So not only are we delivering more live sports, we're delivering more and better live events to the consumer. We also, of course, have breakout original series, next day television, including fan favorites from franchises across Bravo and NBC, and of course, a deep library of television content. Peacock also uniquely has the Pay One window for Universal's films, so those films come straight to Peacock exclusively after theaters, and together this really brings the complete story to life for the consumer.
Now, what is the international roadmap for Peacock?
So Peacock is probably in more places than you would think, just through a number of strategic partnerships, including with Sky and Sky Markets. Sky Showtime is a joint venture that we have in other markets across Europe. And we've also recently announced partnerships in Africa and India. We're taking, I'd say, a very thoughtful approach to how we're expanding the global footprint. So we won't always show up as Peacock, a standalone app, but what you will see is Peacock's technology, Peacock's content, and sometimes Peacock's brand show up through some of the joint ventures and partnerships that we have, where we're entering markets outside of the U.S.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the year of peak investment for Peacock?
It is indeed.
How do you determine the window for that return on the investment?
Peacock, from inception, was designed as a dual revenue stream business. So we launched out of the gates with a world-class advertising business. And when you combine that with the subscriber business and look at the growth trajectory that we're on from a subscriber acquisition and retention perspective, then it really comes down to managing that top line growth efficiently. We have complete conviction in this being our peak investment year.
Okay. Now, when Peacock launched, there was a completely free tier, I think as Matt Strauss said at the time, free as a bird. That was a big differentiator at the time. Now that's gone away.
The change has been quite smooth. If you think about it, the consumer value proposition is quite clear. So when we launched Free as a Bird, Peacock was just showing up as the first time. And so it was a really smart way to scale. One of the things that's very difficult about such a competitive space is to find your path towards speed to scale. And so launching as a free product really allowed Peacock to get into a lot of households very quickly. But we didn't just take the free option away. We invested a lot more in content and a lot more in technology and in the experience. And as we did that, we started to see consumers value that premium experience more and more and show us their willingness to pay for more content, better content, and a smoother experience. And that's when we started to remove the free sign-up flow from Peacock. And so today, we offer Premium and Premium Plus, and we see, those are the consumers that have a higher Net Promoter Score. They're just having a better experience, so it's sort of win-win.
How do you assess what makes a hit?
A couple of our shows have broken through in the top 10 in Nielsen, a couple of our original shows, including Poker Face and including Bel Air. We're also continuing to invest, as you said, in finding these shows that have the ability to really break through in the cultural zeitgeist, to start a conversation, be part of a conversation. And I would even point to Based on a True Story, which we launched just a couple of weeks ago, starring Kaylee Cuoco and Chris Messina, as a story that really taps into what consumers are interested in and talking about today.
Now, you mentioned sports as one of the core pillars of Peacock. Does it make sense for Peacock to include sports and live news and everything in one bundle, if you will?
So you're speaking right to the value proposition of Peacock.
Okay.
And that there's one front door, and you get more live sports than any other streamer. Plus, you get all of the original content. You get next day content from NBC and Bravo only on Peacock. All of our fan favorite library shows, plus films in their first window after theaters from Universal. So it really is that holistic, all-in-one, complete offering for the consumer through one front door.
So when you join Peacock after heading Hulu, describe how the cultures are different.
The Peacock culture is unique in that when you think about when Peacock launched right in the heart of COVID. So teams had to get creative in how they come together and work together. And when you look at the values of the Peacock team and the culture that's emerged since then, it really does point back to people having to sort of get creative, think outside the box. Like, how do you build a collaborative culture when you're working from home and you haven't met many of the people that you work with? I remember walking through the halls of 30 Rock with Matt Strauss when we were starting to return to office. And I kept saying like, oh, hi, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Kelly. And Matt was like, and I'm Matt. I'm like, what's going on here? And it just reminded me again that because the team was started during COVID, not everyone had had the opportunity to meet in person. And the culture, I can tell you, it is very special. It is very collaborative. There's a tremendous amount of energy and ambition and, frankly, having a blast.
What's the next big thing we should look for from Peacock?
More of the same because it's working. But depending on how far out you look, we've got an incredible content slate this year. I think one of the strongest, unique, original slates of content out there. If you look a little further out, we have the Olympics next summer. So that's something that we're talking a lot about this week. There's a lot of opportunity there for Peacock. I think consumers are ready for the Paris Olympics 2024. We'll have full fans. That'll be huge for Peacock and NBCUniversal.
And is the key here in terms of the content offering? Is it you need enough to keep people retained from month to month?
Yeah, it's enough, but it's the right content. So we're constantly looking at, okay, we have this content budget. What's the right mix of investment across live sports in particular, across film, across television, and how do we activate that both to attract new people into Peacock, but also to really drive opportunities to increase the viewership and engagement of that existing base, which we know is so important for any subscription-based streaming service.
What do you see as the biggest areas of opportunity for Peacock? Are there underserved audiences that you're going to specifically tailor to?
I'll talk first about one where I think we're doing incredibly well, which is with Black audiences. With shows like Bel Air and Best Man, The Final Chapters, we've really shown our ability to attract these audiences with talent in front of and behind the cameras, with the stories that we're telling. And when I look at what's happening there, I see what's possible with some of the other audiences that we're targeting, and even some of the fandoms that we're leaning into. Bravo's another great example, where by bringing Bravo content over to Peacock exclusively next day, We've really been able to extend the reach and grow the fandom of some of these franchises within the Bravo ecosystem. Vanderpump Rules being a recent example where not only do we have the show next day, but we've created these extended versions of certain episodes, and we're really establishing like a home for the fandom on Peacock. We're doing that
There's been some
with partners.
controversy too.
Yes, Canva.
Which helps. What's the best piece of creative advice you've ever gotten?
Sure. So I'll give credit where credit due to Lorraine Toohill, who's the CMO of Google, former boss of mine. And she used to always challenge us when we'd come to her with creative to be very crisp on who are you targeting, what's the big idea, and how do you bring it to life creatively.
So what is the big idea for Peacock? In however many words.
The big idea is to become a top streaming service that consumers love by bringing the right mix of content and unique experiences together. If you look at our space, the streaming space was born out of the idea of putting the consumer first. And so when we think about what our strategy is at Peacock, it's to come back to that core truth and put the consumer first as we think about our programming mix, as we think about the technology that we're building into the experience, and really as we look long-term at what's possible. And that one front door that you spoke to, Todd, is a part of that.